It's a final word. World Cup Daily 2023, Day 7. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon with you for Westfield, London, Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. Jeff, take it away. 30 seconds. India, Afghanistan. Tell us about it.
Afghanistan batted first, a lot riding on Gurbaz and Zadran, who were out not for tiny scores, but for not much. But then there was a big partnership between Hashmatullah and Azmatullah, who made 80 and 62 respectively, got Afghanistan up to 272 for 8. Looked a decent score, but this is Delhi where runs come fast and big, and Rohit Sharma made sure that happened. 131 of the best, fastest World Cup 100 for India. They chased it down in 35 overs, standing on their heads. Bish, bosh, bash.
Yeah, as you say, they win in 35 overs, so their net run rate takes them just beneath New Zealand now. In second spot, they've got Pakistan next. I think we might have said after the Australia game, they needed a nice little tune-up against Afghanistan. This is precisely what that was. And Rohit Sharma back into top form, 131 from 84 balls, 16 fours, 5 sixes. So impressive. You know, it was a relatively slow start to the chase, none for 7 off 2, but they put on 156, he and Ishan Kishan, who made 47. So Rohit making 2/3 of the runs, going at 8.5 and over, or something ridiculous like that. Kohli puts on the finishing touches, another half century, unbeaten, 55. Not out there with Shreyas Iyer, who gets some runs at the end after missing out on Sunday against Australia. Jeff, I think where we should start, though, is just trying to frame up what Rohit Sharma means to one-day cricket and where he fits in the, I guess, pantheon of greats. That's his 31st one-day 100, which takes him past Ricky Ponting, who was always the gold standard on that measure for everyone other than Tendulkar. He's got 7 World Cup 100s, more than anyone, also taking Tendulkar over in that innings. 7 in 19 innings. A World Cup average of 70. I mean, by any measure, he's an all-time great, but he's also an all-time World Cup great. You want nobody else leading this side other than Rohit.
And World Cups are a different thing, right? It's a different level as well. The way he played today, it was your classic Rohit 100. Had a little look for a couple of overs, okay, what's going on here? Afghanistan open with Mujib as they do. Had a look for 2 overs, and then he was like, cool, I'll clip that one through mid-wicket. And then, the next over just goes 6-4-4 off Fazal Haq Farooqi, and just then started mowing them down from there. 50 and 30 balls, 163. It's the World Cup equation that's the fascinating one, right? The 7 centuries you mentioned, great, but he got those from 19 games.
Yeah.
Nobody else who's even anywhere near him. So let's look at it this way. There are 22 players now who've made over 1,000 World Cup runs. He went past that mark today. Most of them have played 30-something matches. Tendulkar played 40 plus. He's played the fewest matches, and he's already 12th on that list. If he has a big World Cup here, 500 or 600 runs, he'd comfortably be 3rd on that list. And having done so, playing fewer matches than just about anyone else. David Warner's at a similar pace. He's got just over 1,000 World Cup runs, also from 19 innings, but 400s rather than 7. So, smaller scores a little bit more consistently. Rohit Sharma, obviously, a duck in the first game, and then this big 100 here. But the brutality of it, you look at that list, there's about a dozen players with 10,000 ODI runs. Kohli and Rohit are the only contemporary players amongst them. They've transcended the fact that not as much one-day cricket is played anymore by just dealing in such pure bulk. Like the sheer mountainous nature of the numbers is absolutely astonishing. And I think people forget about it. We were talking about being at the Australia-India game the other night, and how it's 10-1 in the crowd for Virat shirts versus Rohit shirts, which is not a scientific measure. It depends on how many are produced, more so than the market demand, perhaps. But he's always had that second fiddle to Virat thing. There was the weird Kohli stands saying he was no good at cricket, even though he was making all of these runs in the background. And I think it's only right that he gets a bit of his own space and time here tonight, having passed all those records, which he shrugged off after the game, as he would, saying, look, that doesn't matter. I'm here to win the World Cup. Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, the Sachin thing's interesting. Yeah, 45 innings Sachin played for 6 centuries, and Rohit 7 in 19 innings. It's a staggering record. In India as well, where this World Cup's being played, 13 centuries, an average of 59. So it all lines up perfectly for him. And you touch on that Rohit Kohli thing. I know that happens when you've got 2 generational greats playing at roughly the same time. They're going to be compared, and that's fine. But what's been grating periodically is that you see these Kohli super fans with pictures of him in his bio and in their bio and all that kind of ridiculous nonsense, where they somehow think that Rohit is therefore no good. The no-hit Sharma bullshit. We saw the other night, he missed out against Australia. That's what happens when you're opening batsman. You miss out from time to time. Got a beauty from Josh Hazlewood. And I was reading a stream of tweets saying, World Cup, big occasion, can't step up and so on, which has never stood to reason. He's the classic big game performer. Even look at his record against Australia. I know it's a small sample size compared to all the one days he's played, but he averages 58 against the Aussies with 800s, and they've typically had the best bowling attack in the world other than India in this format of the game in the time that he's been playing for India over the last 12 or 13 years in this form. So, yeah, and even the one-day 100, right, today, that's such a profoundly important moment in Indian cricket history. The century from Kapil Dev against Zimbabwe at Tunbridge Wells in 1983. The 100 that made the World Cup win at Lord's possible. They lose to Zimbabwe that day from 25 for 5, which in all probability they're going to. That's World Cup over. But Kapil's record being broken tonight by Rohit seems fitting that he's got them into such a great spot just before they have that blockbuster in front of 100,000 people against Pakistan over the weekend.
I mean, it ends up being more like 15 or 16 years that Rohit Sharma's been playing one-day cricket, given he came in as such a youngster before he got his test opportunity, which does sort of pass you by. He's had a weird way of going under the radar for a guy who's made 3 double hundreds in one-day international cricket and all the rest of it. There was that long period of time where it was like, oh well, he's only a white ball player, hadn't cracked Test cricket, that kind of interpretation of it as well, which has changed in the last 6 or so years. But I find it interesting, and he hasn't played as nearly as much one-day cricket as he would have. You go back a generation before and everyone was playing 300, 350, 400 sort of games. He's played 230, whatever it is. But compared to someone like Steve Smith, who just went past 5,000 one-day runs, and Rohit Sharma is well past 10,000 now, and he hasn't played twice as many games. He's played more games than Smith, but not not to that sort of level that it actually tallies up. So it's his ability to just bulk score, and there's a sort of level of inevitability sometimes, a feeling that he's just going to happen and he's going to make it happen like he did tonight, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. So I think that's how it would have felt for Afghanistan after a few overs. And there was the point where Rashid Khan came on in the 15th over a bit too late, probably, like they needed to pull that ripcord earlier, and he bowled about 3 tidy overs, bowls a fourth that's intermediate, and then Rohit goes, nah, enough of this. 6-4-4 off the first 3 balls of I think it was the 23rd over. And if there was any hope that Afghanistan might have been able to pull it back, that was when it crumbles, when, okay, here is by far and away your best player, your trump card with the ball, and Rohit's going to smash him as well as he's smashing everybody else. It was probably already game over by that point. He brought his 100 up in the 18th over. 50 in the 8th over, 100 in the 18th. Look, we know it's a bit of a mismatch, and particularly given that they played at Delhi. Had it been, say, India, Afghanistan at Chennai, it might have been a little bit more interesting given the way that surface was with Australia the other night. But tonight it was just a night for pongoing. The 100th 6 in the tournament came up, I think, in the first innings of this game, and at that point 30 of them had been hit at Delhi in the one game, the South Africa-Sri Lanka game that had been played there. So probably add another 10 tonight that got punched over the rope, or 10 or 12 or whatever it was in the game today.
Yeah, there were 8 in India's innings of 273 in 15 overs. And look, great leadership's also about providing the conditions for your teammates to succeed. And I think that's what he did for Ishan Kishan. 47 from 47, but remember, he gets out for a golden duck to Mitchell Starc a couple of days ago. He absorbs, I think, 8 dot balls before scoring here, because Rohit's doing so much damage down the other end. It can allow Kishan to play in the mode you need to play in, just to feel at ease. And now he's in the tournament with that 150-run stand with Rohit. Not to say that Kishan's spot was under any threat necessarily, but Shubman Gill will become available at some point in the tournament. And there's always one batter in the top 7 who's in the death spot. You don't want to be that guy, and he's helped himself along tonight by making a contribution. And this wasn't the flat track in quite the same way that I felt the other day with South Africa and Sri Lanka. That felt like an absolute freeway where players could hit off the straight whenever they saw fit to do so. And Rohit was doing it. I mean, that shot he played off Rashid, it was probably around the 25th over. Rashid, who, by the way, was the sixth bowler used. I doubt he's been the sixth bowler used for Afghanistan in any game ever in his international career over the last 6 or 7 years. It says a bit about, and he took the 2 wickets, right? And he gets the wrong one to go through the gate of Rohit Sharma eventually and also gets rid of Ishan Kishan. But yeah, where they misused, I reckon, to an extent, Rashid not having their real trump card on earlier on. But Rohit hit him across the line for 6 at one stage. It was effortless. You said brutal before, but the thing with Rohit Sharma over the years, it's elegant, it's effortless. He does it in a slightly different way. The shot he played to move from 103 to 107 is one of the most immaculate cover drives you could ever wish to see. 3 diving fielders all going in different directions. And he better than bisected them because there was 3 of them, and he managed to get it through all of them, threading the needle with timing that you might expect watching like an old YouTube compilation of Damien Martin. Well, that's what Rohit does as well. So there's a brutality of clearing balls over mid-wicket, of pulling and hooking balls over square leg and backwards square, which has been his trademark shot. But he's always had that graceful cover drive, which completes the package.
The trisecting, perhaps.
Trisecting, there you go.
Trisector tops. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a mathematical concept. I'm sure some people can let us know, some geometricians out there. I want to talk about the Afghanistan innings as well, because I really enjoyed that first innings of the match today. I mean, at the halfway mark, it felt like 282 wouldn't be enough, sure, but it was a competent, well-managed sort of innings when it could have gone off the rails. We talked in our preview show about how much Zadran and Gurbaz, the 2 young openers, are the 2 really relied on by Afghanistan, and that the middle order often underperforms, under-delivers. That wasn't the case today. It was a good contest early with Bumrah and with Siraj. Siraj is swinging the ball. Bumrah is getting it to seam. The Afghanistan openers sort of play things out cautiously for a little while, and then they start to get going a bit, particularly against Siraj, who's pitching up a little bit more. Gurbaz smokes him through cover a couple of times. Zadran, before that, scores 3 boundaries to get things going. Drives mostly, sort of off drives. And, there's that little bit of wrestle between the opening bats and the opening bowlers going on. And then Bumrah gets one to really stand up off the seam and nicks off Zadran for 22. So they're 32 for 1 at that point. Gurbaz gets going for a little bit, pulls a 6 off Shardul Thakur, who then bowls a no-ball beamer that lands off the pitch and gets a warning and has to bowl the free hit and all the rest of it. Bowls a wide, trying to avoid getting smashed off the free hit. And then, sort of clears his head, takes this incredible catch, one of those relay catches, relay to himself, where he has to throw it back in and jump back in the field of play, and then comes back in the next over to pick up a wicket as well, gets Ramat Shah LBW. Yeah. So, look, suddenly they're 3 down, and they should fall apart at this point, Afghanistan, but they don't, because that's when Hashmatullah and Azmatullah, they go on the go slow for 10 or 15 overs, and then they start to build up pace and build up momentum and start to counter-attack, start hitting a few sixes, start hitting boundaries, and build up this 100-plus partnership, which was really heartening to see a performance of that level, where Afghanistan's middle-order batting has been the weakest part of their game.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. And it was actually an 8-over window where the go slow was happening. So from when they came together, when Ramat was dismissed by Thakur, into the side for Ashwin today, which is something we've glossed over. And I think Ashwin will be back for Ahmedabad against Pakistan due to all that big game experience. But whether he comes in for Thakur, maybe even Siraj conceding 76 runs in 10 overs today, that's an open question. But back to the Afghanistan batters. Yeah, together from the 22nd over, and there's a moment, right? So Hashmatullah realises there are 4 men inside the circle when there should be 5 men inside the circle, takes a swing across the line against Jadeja, looks a dreadful shot, gets a top edge, goes for 4. Then he immediately walks over to Michael Goff and says, mate, there is 1 too few inside the circle. That's a no ball. I want my free hit. Yeah. So and that felt like the trigger. Like he was cricket smart enough, the captain, to see an opportunity, took that. And the next 79 balls together, they had 104 runs at 8s. And at that stage, remembering that Azmatullah was promoted from 7 to 5, he's more a bowler than a batter typically, but goes in ahead of Nabi, ahead of Najibullah as well. And he takes responsibility, makes 62 from 69, hits 4 big ones. allows Hashmatullah to do what he does best, finding the rope with more conventional stroke play. And at that juncture, really they should get 300. A little bit like England yesterday, the back 10 didn't quite work. They made 61 from the final 10 overs, and they really kind of fall away after losing Hashmatullah.
Sri Lanka yesterday?
No, it was England yesterday who should have gone on to have made 400, but they had a bad last 10, relatively speaking, because Bangladesh bowled better.
Same thing happened in the other game.
Right,
so almost exactly the same score. I think it was 61 for something off the last 10.
Yeah, so I mean, when they lose Ajmatullah to Hardik Pandya, knocking him over with one where he just ripped his fingers down the seam, really classy bowling. I felt for Hashmatullah, out for 80, leg before wicket to Kuldeep. The perfect opportunity to go on and be Afghanistan's first World Cup 100. It would have felt fitting had he done so against India. Doesn't quite come to pass as a consequence. Even there was a bit of lusty blow efforts towards the end. Rashid Khan hit a 6 in the penultimate over. But you're right. 272 wasn't going to be enough. It needed to be like 320. They needed to make the absolute most of that 120 run stand. And that's just an experience seeing up against, Bumrah, who finishes with 4 for 39, 6 wickets in 2 games. And, is he the best white ball bowler in the world? Like, probably near enough to it. Had a great World Cup in 2019, and he's picked up from where he left off there. And all roads lead to Ahmedabad on Sunday for him as well.
And I think you talked about them being too slow bringing Rashid Khan in with the ball. They were too slow with the bat as well. He comes in the 47th, cracks a cut shot for 6 over point, and hits another 4 and gets out for 16 off 12 because he just has to swing at that stage. But he's such a clean striker of the ball. Surely you want him coming in the 43rd when Hashmat gets out. Like, that was just a missed trick. I don't know how Jonathan Trott and his team aren't planning for that, to use Rashid in that way where he can be so destructive, rather than having another couple of players come out and wickets fall. So, India did a good job of puncturing the balloon towards the end. But it was an innings of maturity as a team effort from Afghanistan, which hasn't always been the case with the bat. So, I think there's something to be encouraged by in terms of how they played there. But I think we've done the game as well as we can, and I think it's time to go to the Final Word Hall of Fame.
The Final Word Hall of Fame is brought to you by Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. Jeff, we weren't on together yesterday, so I didn't get the chance to tell you that the biggest Christmas tree in Europe, Christmas tree, that's quite the claim. You think about all the Christmas markets that are held over the continent, all the kind of novelty Christmas trees put up in town squares and in parliaments and all the rest of it. The biggest Christmas tree in Europe is at the ice rink at Westfield London. How's that? So,
and Europe is the home of the Christmas tree. That's where the Christmas tree comes from. The iconic fir tree covered in snow is a northern Christmas staple. And yet, none of them have made a tree bigger than the one at Westfield. I jumped on
the website today, which is in the show notes, for skating at Westfield London. It's 11 quid to go. That's pretty reasonable, if you ask me. Half term's coming up later in the month, so that's when schools get a week off and so on. But even before that, starts second week in November. Get down to Westfield London, click the link, pick your time, and get on the ice. I said before that we continue to mention the West Coast Eagles in that context, but we'll move on from that gag. But I mean, I've only ice skated a couple of times, Jeff. I don't expect you're somebody who's done it too often, but I know it's not as hard as it looks. You don't need to be as skillful as Gordon Bombay and the Mighty Ducks to be able to competently get around the ice. It's no trickier than roller skating or indeed rollerblading as kids of the 90s. I'm sure we both rollerbladed in the early to mid 90s when we were in primary school. But I encourage you to consider it, Jeff. If you come over to London after the World Cup, or anyone listening, it's all there. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. See the big Christmas tree.
I won't linger on the fact that we're talking about Christmas trees on the 11th of October. But it's a conversation for another day. We haven't even had Halloween yet. Right, Hall of Fame. I've got Shreyas Iyer in there for that absolutely monstrous 6. After a day of Rohit hitting everything, Shreyas was like, you think that's good? Check this one out. They couldn't even track it on the cameras. It went so far that it just disappeared into the very back of the stand somewhere. Did it say how many meters it went in the end? I was trying to look for that. I didn't. It didn't come up. I didn't notice it on the screen. I think they were too busy with the winning bit afterwards. But first ball of a Majib over, decent bowler, put him about 150 metres away.
The only nomination I have tonight is when Naveen Al-Haq went up to Virat Kohli not long after Kohli walked in, and they kind of grabbed each other by the arm and had this embrace. Now, the Indian crowd were giving it to Naveen earlier in the night, the Delhi crowd, due to the altercation between Kohli and Naveen at the IPL this year. You might remember, Jeff, where Lucknow were playing Royal Challengers Bangalore, and after the game, Kohli, I think, directed his bowlers to bowl bumpers at Naveen. They had a stoush in the middle when shaking hands. Then Gautam Gambhir, the mentor for Lucknow, got involved as well. So originally I was thinking, maybe this is Naveen trying to get himself a contract with RCB. And if you Google this, you will see that many people are speculating that's the club he'll go to next year, that he'll leave Lucknow and end up at the RCB. Don't get stuck into me in the comments if that's wrong. I'm just quoting what I'm reading on the internet. I don't profess to know an awful lot about the machinations of the IPL. But yes, after he was copping grief earlier at Naveen, he made his peace with the Delhi crowd and Kohli.
We talked about Ian Bishop and postmodernism last week. In terms of linguistic deconstruction, I liked Rohit's line after the game. I was glad to go a little big. A little big. Isn't that nice? Contradictory, but it kind of makes sense. And this part I really liked. You know how there's a degree of obsequious hero worship when it comes to Indian cricketers. But they were making a big deal at the end of the coverage about how this was a moving moment because it was Virat Kohli's final. I heard them say something about his final game. I was like, what? He's not retiring halfway through a World Cup. His final World Cup match at Delhi, they said, as in his home ground. He will never play another World Cup match at his home ground. Do you want to know how many World Cup matches Virat Kohli has played at Delhi?
I'm going to guess at most 3. 2011, the 2016 World Cup. 2, right? Okay.
2.
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking 50 over World Cups. He played a game in 2011 against Netherlands and made 12. And so that incredible legacy, that amazing run in front of his home crowd comes to an end tonight with an unbeaten half century. Oh, God. Sometimes it's a little too much.
There is always... there is always you're going to do it here. I was going to say, there's always a factoid with Kohli that get people, no matter what it is. And it sounds like you're another one here.
Yes, he extended his average in winning run chases to 89.87 tonight with another unbeaten 50 and a winning run chase.
Well, that means something. That means an awful lot more than Kohli playing his final World Cup game.
His final World Cup match at Delhi.
In terms of what's ahead for India, it's Pakistan. We've said it a number of times. Ahmedabad on Saturday. That'll be must-see TV, or get down to the ground. I mean, there's probably tickets on sale, given the capacity there and what we've seen at Ahmedabad in the opening game. Afghanistan have England on Sunday at Delhi again. And tomorrow, Australia, who dropped their first game against India, will play South Africa at Lucknow, where you are, Jeff. Wouldn't want to get too carried away, but if Australia lose that one, they're in strife.
And South Africa looked very, very good in game one. So it should be tasty. It should be very tasty indeed.
All right, this has been day 7 of the World Cup Daily on the Final Word. With Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon, we're here in partnership with Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. If you really like what we do, jump on our Patreon, patreon.com/The Final Word. We'll be back tomorrow for Australia and the Proteas.
Bye.